Funding for This Is Nashville comes from you, our listeners, and Music City Prep Clinic, Nashville-based provider for PrEP and offering comprehensive sexual health services in an environment designed to be safe, professional, and shame-free. Learn more at musiccityprep.org.
I'm Blake Farmer, and this is Nashville, our weekly Roundabout edition. It's our collective moment to think through the biggest news of the week together, starting with the results from the 7th Congressional District primaries this week. It's a district that runs through Clarksville, Dixon, parts of Nashville, Franklin, goes all the way to the Alabama border. But even if you're not in that district, and you may not even know if you're in that district, the results tell us something about the political climate here in Tennessee. The winners were Matt Van Epps, who got a late endorsement from President Trump, and State Representative Afton Bain for the Democrats. Our panel today includes the runner-up for the GOP race, State Representative Jody Barrett. Thank you for joining the Roundabout panel this week.
Yes, sir. Thanks for having me.
Also, Bruce Berry, columnist for the Tennessee Lookout, and WPLN's Power and Equity reporter, Marianna Bacallao. Welcome to you both.
Great to be here.
Thank you.
So the Roundabout is also your time to weigh in, as in you listening. Are you a 7th District voter? Did you sit out? Did your candidate win? What kind of advertising caught your attention? Join us on air at 615-760-2000. We're also streaming video on YouTube today, youtube.com/@WPLN. You can put a comment or question in the chat, and we'll work that into the conversation as well. Either way, say hello. We love to know who's watching. So, Representative Barrett, what'd you do on your day off?
Mowed my grass. Caught up on some much needed deferred maintenance around the house.
I like that. Well, so you came in second to Matt Van Epps, but oddly, you were a pretty big focus of the race. Many dollars spent in outside money, a lot of them from private school voucher supporters. Are private school vouchers really that big of an issue in District 7?
Well, I mean, I think you can look at how I did in the two counties that I represent in the State House, Dixon and Hickman County. They're part of the 7th. I won both of those pretty handily, more than 50% of the vote in both of those counties in a big field. And so clearly that type of attack or that line of attack did not work and resonate very well there.
Well, when you entered the race, I mean, I believe you even sort of talked about, listen, I was one of the only Republicans to vote against Governor Lee's private school voucher program. So did you know that this was going to be a difficult issue?
Well, I certainly figured that there would be a lot of discussion about it. And it was no surprise that I was being attacked because that actually started all the way back in March. The American Federation for Children has been running sending mailers into my House district since March, even though the bill passed and the program's in place. So not really sure why they're picking one of 22 Republicans that voted against it to attack. I think I'm the only one that they're actively doing that against. And certainly running for the 7th was not on my radar at that time. So I'm not sure what the motivation is there. Is
it just to keep others in line in other states?
I would think so. There was some discussion back during the special session as to what might happen to those that voted against it. References to Texas and how that there was a concerted push to move some of the conservatives out who voted against school choice there. And so I would say that it probably is. They had to pick somebody that they could choose as an example to be made of. And so I guess I have broad shoulders. I'll take that.
Marianna, do we know how much of a difference the late endorsement from Governor Bill Lee and then President Trump just right before Election Day, how much difference that made?
I would say I think it's harder to say than you would think just watching some of the early voting totals that came in on the primary election day. Trump made his endorsement after early voting had ended, and just the early voting numbers showed that Van Epps was already ahead.
I see. So in other words, he was already picking what looked like might be a winner. At least we learned on election night. Bruce, on the Democratic side, it was a much closer race. 3 state representatives and a businessman. Did the results tell you anything about the electorate in Middle Tennessee?
Well, I think that during the course of the campaign, a lot of the conversation and chatter among people I was talking to on the Democratic side, conversations, so how do you think this is going to turn out? Trying to prognosticate the race. And there seemed to be a consensus opinion that nobody knew how it was actually going to turn out.
Yeah.
When I was asked that question, I would respond by saying, any order of finish is imaginable. What was interesting about the race is you had three candidates, the three state representatives, Bo Mitchell, Vincent Dixie, and Afton Bain, who won the primary. All three of them from Davidson County, and all three of them with essentially a kind of a lane. Maybe you could call it a base, but certainly a lane. And then you had Darden Copeland, the outsider businessman, not so much a political outsider in the sense that he's been kind of a political operative for years, but never a candidate. And he raised the most money and spent the most money in more traditional campaign messaging formats. Did a lot of TV. The rest of them did essentially none. A lot of mailers. And so the race was kind of an interesting test almost of campaign methodologies. And it was very hard to predict as a result. None of these candidates had the money or chose to spend the money on polling. Nobody shared any polling if they did.
Right.
And so it really was a kind of a mystery. So your question, so what do we learn from this? Well, I think we learn that money can buy you name recognition and notice. I mean, Darden Copeland from Nashville, known to nobody, other than political insiders, actually did quite well in a lot of the rural counties. Nobody there had heard of him, of course, but they watched TV.
And so they saw his ads.
And probably got, some mailers. He did not do well in Davidson County. And that's where these other three had their lanes. And I think a lesson that comes out of this is, especially given the short time frame of the race, you kind of have to get in with a base and a lane to start with, because it's very hard to buy your way into that in such a short period of time. Maybe in a longer time frame. The other thing is, Darden Copeland, I say he raised the most and spent the most, but it wasn't like magically large amounts of money. He didn't come in and spend millions in a race where the others were spending thousands. He came in and spent a couple of $100,000 where the others were spending less than that.
And a reminder, this was a special election. The seat vacated by Mark Green, who stepped down in the middle of a term. So for you, the listener, did you vote in the 7th District race? Did you sit out? How'd you feel about the winners, Matt Van Epps and Afton Bain? Join us on air by calling 615-760-2000. Or you can leave us a comment where we're streaming video from the studio here if you're watching at youtube.com/@WPLN. Representative Barrett, you've been known to buck your own party from time to time. I wonder what this week's results tell you about independence in this pretty polarized political moment.
Well, I think I'm very encouraged by the vote total that we got, over 9,000 votes. I think 9,300, 9,400 votes. You talk about the polling, Bruce. There was some polling data available on the Republican side, and most everyone was shocked by the results of how wide the margin was, even really shocked by the early voting totals.
Wait, so you're saying that polling showed it to be closer than
yes.
what it was? Yeah.
In fact, on a talk radio station here in town that's more of a conservative talk radio station, just minutes before the polls closed, they were predicting that I would win.
Really?
Yes.
Based on what?
Just polling data and other circumstantial data and information out there. There was a feeling or a buzz that I was probably doing very well coming out of early voting. And so I think the Trump endorsement may very well have been that he had some other data and some information that we weren't privy to, or it may have been kind of a last-minute Hail Mary thing of, hey, this is closer than we would like it to be, and we really need this bump from the president coming in to give our guy an opportunity to pull away, which we did see. The Trump bump happened on Election Day. The turnout numbers were all predicted on the Republican side to be 32,000 or less, particularly when you look at early voting and how many people voted in early voting. Several of the experts, and I use that air quotes there, predicted that maybe 70 to 75% of the vote may have come in early voting, and that just did not proved to be true. And so many of us, of the 11 Republicans, thought that 8,500 votes might be enough to win, and that. When I got 9,300 votes,
so you're feeling good about that?
I felt pretty good about it. And so, it was a bit of a surprise to see.
So it was almost a turnout bump as much
absolutely.
as anything.
Yeah, absolutely, on Election Day.
Wow. Let's take a call. Chris in Nashville is you're on This Is Nashville, and you're on with Representative Barrett.
How you doing, Representative Barrett?
Doing well, sir. Thanks for calling.
Good. I was calling to just hear your thoughts or concerns or any insights you have. Are you familiar with the mailers that went out, the GOP mailers that went out? They were pretty concerning. They were big brotherish, saying, we're watching how you vote. It's important that you get out to vote. We'll be watching. Are you familiar with those mailers?
Yes.
And do you have any thoughts or concerns or insight on either where they came from or what's going on with that? Because we're in a strange place right now, and that's pretty strange and dangerous and damaging language.
So that did not come from any official GOP party affiliate or anything along those lines. As my understanding, this tactic was used once before, I think maybe in Virginia, and it was paid for by an independent individual who decided that he wanted to do that. And we suspect, I've not heard any confirmation yet, but we suspect it's the same guy that did that.
Yeah, Nina Cardona, our morning host, did a little. I could have sworn it was Texas, but that it was almost identical to something that went out in a race in another sort of state legislative race.
I think it was
Marianna?
Texas. Yeah.
Yeah. Anything else to add to that, Marianna? About what we know about that particular mailer or other mailers that went out?
I don't think so. I think that we have seen a lot of out of state money pour into these races. So it makes sense in that regard. And a lot of the out-of-state groups, when you look at the numbers, sometimes you find there's only one actor. In terms of the School Freedom Fund, which I know spent a majority of their money attacking Representative Barrett for what they saw as anti-school voucher sentiment. That fund was entirely funded by billionaire Jeff Yass this year. The entire fund is funded by one $10 million donation from him. Yeah,
a lot of money out of state. Representative Barrett, would you anticipate there being more money? Out of state money in the general election as well, or was that mostly for the primary?
Oh no, there's going to be millions.
It'll be a national kind of race.
This is going to be the only race going on in the country, and both parties feel like they have a shot to get this seat, and so there will be millions of dollars flowing into the state.
Bruce, is there a shot? I mean, do the results tell us that the congressional district really is an opportunity for Democrats?
Well, politics is always an exercise in glasses that are half empty and half full, right? So one number that comes out of the primary is that the turnout that Jody was referring to, the turnout difference for Democrats and Republicans just in raw numbers was about 9%, which is to say about 9% more Republicans than Democrats voted last Tuesday. This is a district that Trump won by 22 points. So if you were to just hypothetically imagine that the Republican Van Epps beats the Democrat Bain by 9 points, that same margin, that would be a significant overperformance by Democrats. It would be sort of in line with the kind of overperformance we've been seeing in special elections around the country during this cycle. Now, if you're Afton Bain and you're the Democrats, you're saying, okay, well, that's great to overperform, but how do we get that additional 9%? How do we get all the way there? And the answer, of course, is turnout, energizing your base. I mean, 30,000-ish Democrats voted last Tuesday in this primary. In the general election in 2024, the last time Mark Green was reelected, the Democratic candidate, somebody with whom I'm dimly acquainted, received 122,000 votes. Obviously, if you can get all 122,000 people who voted for the Democrat in 2024 to come out in this general election in December, the Democrats would win easily. But that's very hard to do. And the question is, how do you do that? And let me just make one last point on the outside money issue. Obviously, Representative Bain, as the Democratic candidate, is looking to nationalize the race herself. In fact, she said so explicitly at a Democratic event earlier this morning. And, that means nationalizing interest and also money in order to perhaps make that happen. But, it's an uphill battle, no question.
Yeah, Representative Barrett?
So, I think there's two different things going on between the parties. Now looking at the general, Afton Bain represents the progressive wing of the Democrat Party, which is probably a smaller sliver overall. So I think she's going to have an easier time coalescing her party, getting the mainstream of her party to come behind her. The opposite is true for the Republicans. Matt Van Epps was more of the establishment-backed candidate with
He was in Governor Lee's administration.
Sure, Governor Lee and president and all of that. And so there are going to be some of the more, conservative wing voters in the party that were maybe disillusioned or disappointed with all of the money that came in and how that happened. So we're going to have to work harder, I think, on the Republican side to coalesce and bring everybody on board behind one candidate. The other thing is, do not overlook the independents that are in this race. There are 5 of them, and they are going to play a role in this.
Well, just in case we don't come back to the topic of this race, and we've talked about it plenty, but how are you feeling as runner-up? I could have sworn I saw a quote somewhere that was like, I'm not sure I wanted to go to Washington anyway or something. What are you feeling?
Oh, God bless the Tennessee Star. I did not. This is not a position that I ever sought for myself. It's not like I've been setting up a step-by-step process to get to D.C. And so when this seat opened up, I was a reluctant participant. I've kind of got a pretty decent life right now. And, we homeschool a 14-year-old freshman in high school. I can drive back and forth from Nashville and serve in the legislature and sleep in my own bed and not have to get on a plane or do any of those things. And so it was going to be kind of a big, change in our lifestyle for our family. And so had we won this race. And so, that was something that we had to weigh out. And I don't feel like I've necessarily lost, so to speak. In fact, a lot of people ask me along the way, why are you doing this? Why are you running? I said, look, I really don't have anything to lose because I don't have to give up my seat. It gives me a kind of a free shot to do this. It's a shortened time period. It's going to be a cheaper race, something I wouldn't have to raise millions of dollars for to do a regular term election. And so the only thing I had to lose was that I might win and have to go to D.C. So, the headlines can be deceiving sometimes.
Bruce, you going to step in there or what?
Well, the only thing it's part of me wants to say if you didn't really want to run, you shouldn't run, right? But actually, I applaud anybody for any office from any party who steps up and runs. And, Jody talked about the idea that there was an opportunity here. It is not a good thing that seats become available so rarely. Right. I'm not a fan of putting term limits in place legally, but the arguments, getting people to move along and creating those opportunities. And because they arise so rarely, you do have to make a decision like Jody made, like, okay, well, do I do this now? It's there. And I always applaud people who want to step up and run. It's hard work, no matter what you're running for.
Well, we're overdue for a break. When we return, we'll continue taking your calls. We'll also take up some new items, including the Trump administration's offer to several universities, including Vanderbilt, to get some preferential treatment and funding. Join the conversation by phone at 615-760-2000 or in the chat at youtube.com/@WPLN, where we're streaming video today. It's our weekly roundabout with Jody Barrett, Marianna Bacallao, and Bruce Berry. Stay with us. This is Nashville.
Funding for This is Nashville comes from you, our listeners, and Music City Prep Clinic, Nashville-based provider for PrEP and offering comprehensive sexual health services in an environment designed to be safe, professional, and shame-free. Learn more at musiccityprep.org.
I'm Blake Farmer, and this is Nashville. It's our weekly roundabout. Our panel, with views from across the political spectrum, helps us digest the week's news in Middle Tennessee. We have State Representative Jody Barrett, who was running in the congressional primary won by Matt Van Epps this week. Bruce Barrett, columnist for the Tennessee Lookout, and Marianna Bacallao, WPLN's Power and Equity reporter. So we learned this week about the Compact for Academic Excellence in Higher Education. It was offered initially to 9, but maybe there are more now, of the most selective schools in the country, including Vanderbilt. It asks universities to accept the government's definition of gender and apply it to campus bathrooms, locker rooms, women's sports teams. Asks colleges to stop considering race, gender, and a wide range of other student demographics in admissions process. And it requires that undergraduates take the SAT and ACT. I think Vanderbilt issued just a one-sentence statement pledging to carefully review the compact and provide meaningful feedback to the administration. There was a protest on campus last night. We've had it sounds like 900 faculty, staff, students signing a petition for Vanderbilt not to go along with it. So Bruce Barrett, your day job is a professor on campus at Vanderbilt. Are you with those 900 folks who've signed this petition?
Well, I didn't sign the petition because I actually wasn't aware of it, but I likely would have. Let me say that anything I say here, these are my own views. Vanderbilt I'm employed there. I'm a faculty member. I don't speak for the university.
Certainly.
And I wouldn't want to tread on the university administration's precious institutional neutrality obsession and suggest that anything I say has anything to do with what the university might think. There's a lot to dislike about that compact. I think anybody with a even pretty basic understanding of constitutional law and principles of academic freedom can spot the numerous problems with it and the reasons why, in my opinion, the universities like Vanderbilt should refuse to play ball with a compact like this. And by the way, I should mention that the Vanderbilt faculty, which has a thing called a faculty senate, it called a special meeting yesterday in which a resolution urging the administration to reject the compact was discussed and adopted by a pretty resounding margin. That has no force of governance inside Vanderbilt. The faculty senate's an advisory body, but you're seeing faculty senates at these various universities that were delivered the compact in turn engaging in this kind of deliberation and decision process.
And beyond voting and saying reject this compact, what is sort of the attitude towards it and the maybe consideration that the administration is giving to this proposal?
Well, I can't say what consideration the administration is giving because they're not really, as you mentioned, talking about it. The quote from their release was, "We're reviewing it," which I interpret to mean our lawyers are reviewing it, and we are as well. But they haven't spoken in any detail since then. I believe, if I have it right, that the Department of Education, the administration has given these 9 universities until October 20th maybe, to respond. So
pretty short timeline.
So I think you'll start to see these universities as institutions speak about it, which they haven't done yet.
For folks listening, how do you feel about the Trump administration laying out pretty clearly what schools need to do to get favorable treatment? Join us on air if you'd like to join in, 615-760-2000. Marianna, remind us of what kind of political pressure Vanderbilt has been dealing with from the Trump administration, because it's not just this.
Yeah, Vanderbilt has been part of the Trump administration's targeting of DEI on college campuses. Vanderbilt has taken some of that language out of their student life organizations. Those things have gone away. Vanderbilt was also, one of a few longtime sponsors of Nashville Pride that not only pulled funding, but also they were set up to provide medical services for the parade and pulled out, I think, less than a month before.
Right.
So Vanderbilt is under this pressure, and it seems like they're going along with the Trump administration.
And let me just throw in that I think a lot of those moves that Marianna is mentioning were kind of preemptive rather than responding to specific pressure to do something particular. Vanderbilt as an institution has, I think, tried to keep its head down during this period to try and avoid drawing focus or
Yeah.
trying to avoid being targeted, which clearly didn't work since this compact targets Vanderbilt. The other thing that's I think important to say for your listeners to remind everybody is that some years ago, 5, 7, 8 years ago, how many ever years it was, Vanderbilt University and the Vanderbilt University Medical Center became separate corporate entities completely. And that's significant because some of the steps that Marianna's talking about are maybe things that Vanderbilt University Medical Center did rather than Vanderbilt
right.
University. And I think that most people in town sort of conflate the two because they both have the V word at the start. But those are separate decision-making entities.
Yeah. Well, Representative Barrett, Republicans in the state legislature have kind of battled with Vanderbilt on several fronts. I remember, probably 10 years ago talking about guns on campus and different things. But I wonder what you think of this more proactive approach from the Trump administration. Say, hey, you want to work well with us? Here's what we need you to do.
Yeah, well, and I think it's a little disingenuous to call it targeting Vanderbilt. As I understand what is being offered in this compact is not a threat to remove funding that they're currently getting, but more as a proactive offer of favorable treatment for future funding that may come down the pike. And so this is more of a soft-handed approach, that's something that is unusual for the Trump administration. So in some ways, I think it's welcoming to see that they're trying to let's build a bridge here instead of going to war over every little thing. And by offering, hey, here are the things that we think are important that we would like to see happening on our college campuses. We understand that many of these are private universities. Some of you are state-funded universities. But as the evolution of higher education has happened over the last 30, 40 years, there's become this metamorphosis where the public and private universities are kind of indistinguishable anymore because there's so much federal money that comes in, whether it's research or other funding that happens. And so because of that, the Trump administration feels like they have more of a lane to get in there. And that's the danger, the threat. We mentioned or we talked about the voucher plan earlier. That's what happens when you start getting public dollars, taxpayer money going into private institutions. Once that happens and those fingers are in the pie, you give them a little bit of influence over what you're doing.
Are you? I'm not sure I hear though. Are you troubled in any way about sort of trying to dictate what happens on campus? I mean, some of these things you sort of feel like might be non-starters with a lot of them. Like employees will abstain from actions or speech relating to societal and political events, except in cases in which external events have a direct impact upon the university. I mean, you think, I guess Bruce wouldn't be here. That kind of thing, right?
Well, some of these things are, depending on how you imagine they might play out. If there was some enforcement or some detriment to the university on the basis of these activities, these are clear First Amendment infringements, especially for public institutions. I mean, this is really constitutionally troubling. Jody's point that, well, it's more like inducements for special treatment rather than threats for punishment.
It's kind of a carrot or a stick.
It's kind of both, I think, pretty obviously, because the inducements carry implied threats, and I think we see that in the ways that the Trump administration has dealt with other universities up to this point. The old sort of nice little university you have there wouldn't want to see anything happen to it kind of implication.
Representative Barrett, do you see anything? Do you want to respond to that? Do you see anything sinister there?
Well, I mean, certainly I think it's through the eyes of the beholder. But I also think that you've seen this play out regardless of which party is in power in the White House, as far as using the power of the purse to try to influence society and particularly higher education. And so it's not a new thing that's happening here, but it is a new approach in that I do think it is coming at it from a standpoint of, hey, we want to be partners. We want to try to, offer you a little bit of an advantage. It's kind of like the Fast Pass. We're going to give you the Fast Pass to get on the ride quicker than anybody else if you agree to kind of cooperate with us.
And I want to sort of agree with Jody on a part of this. When you say it's not new, I sort of agree with that to a good extent, in the sense that the federal government has always placed conditions on federal support. Universities have to abide by, Title IX and Title VI and such in order to be eligible for, receiving students with federal student loans and other federal benefits. I mean, there's always been conditions on federal aid to universities, but it is a different approach, and the approach is troubling because those conditions usually come through a normal process of agency rulemaking with a notice and comment period, or they come through congressional action. They don't come through the White House writing a letter to university presidents saying, "This is what you must do." It's a bad process.
Let's take a phone call on this. Yes. Well, Heidi in Nashville, you're on This Is Nashville, and Heidi, I believe this is Senator Heidi Campbell, correct?
Yes, right. Hey, thanks for having me. I'll be brief. I just wanted to echo Bruce Berry's comments and say that, it's ludicrous the mechanism through which this is happening, regardless of whether or not, and I would agree that this does happen in terms of, both sides having issues that they want to prioritize. But this is totalitarianism. This is coming directly from an administration, and it is a threat to higher education. And if there's any place where we need critical thinkers who are able to think clearly and freely, it's in higher education, and we need that more than ever. So I think it's beyond alarming, and I certainly hope that Vanderbilt will hold the line.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Senator Campbell. Representative Barrett, would you, totalitarianism, I mean, as you said, eye of the beholder, but do you feel that some of what they're asking for does cross any sort of line that you feel goes too far?
No,
yeah.
I don't.
Yeah.
And look, again, using language like totalitarian and fascism and all this stuff, this is part of why we've gotten where we are as a country, where we can't talk to each other because we're using just inflammatory language like that. And it's disappointing to hear from an elected official using that. The bottom line here is this. This is optional. This is not the Trump administration sending letters out to these universities mandating that they do these things or they're going to have something taken away from them. This is a letter that's sent out with a new program that's being created by the White House or at least proposed by the White House with the option of, hey, we would like you to participate. If you choose not to participate, you don't have to. That's not totalitarianism.
Can I jump in with a quick point? I think that when Heidi Campbell says on the phone that she hopes Vanderbilt will hold the line, I think what's really important here is not just that Vanderbilt hold the line, but that these universities come together to hold the line.
That it's not just seeing that because if others go, you're like, well, I guess we may have to.
I think that's a concern that some have.
Well,
I mean, university leaders have to decide individually how courageous they want to be in the face of this, but I think they should be thinking about how they act in concert together.
Let's sneak in one other story before we go to the break. Justin Pearson, a Tennessee Democrat known for his activism in the State House, is announced that he's going to run for Congress against Steve Cohen in Memphis. Marianna, are you surprised at all to see a primary challenge to Steve Cohen?
I guess not. I feel Justin J. Pearson has always had that sort of that activism element that like we also see in Afton Bain, looking for that higher office. So I am not surprised.
Yeah. And Representative Barrett, is he somebody who can attract support from Republicans?
Oh, God, no.
Yeah.
No. But Senator Cohen, Congressman Cohen needs to take this very, very seriously.
Yeah. I mean, he's been in office, I think, nearly 20 years. I'm sure there's been a primary challenge somewhere along the way, but not many, I don't think.
There have been a few.
Yeah. No, and the game has changed since he had to run a competitive race. He is going to have to change the way he does business in order to compete with Justin Pearson. He will be a formidable challenger, and he will raise significant money. So I don't think many of us that serve with him are surprised by this either. We kind of saw this coming as well. Certainly after the expulsion and them raising so much money in the wake of that. nationally that coming in. And so he has raised his profile to the point that I think he will not have much trouble raising a lot of money, and he will give Congressman Cohen a run for his money.
I agree with Jody that Steve Cohen needs to take this seriously. The Tennessee Journal, which is firewalled except for subscribers, has a piece up this morning that basically quotes Representative Cohen calling this primary challenge a hit job.
Oh, wow.
And I think that doesn't qualify as taking this seriously. And this is starting out on a nasty foot. It also quotes Pearson saying that he made a courtesy call to Cohen, and he found Cohen to be arrogant and dismissive in that call. So this is starting out on a pretty rough foot, and we'll see where it goes.
Well, we need to take one last break. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about the First Amendment and Tennesseans losing jobs over political statements they've made online. Join us on air at 615-760-2000 or leave a comment in the chat at youtube.com/@WPLN, where we're streaming video. We'll be right back. This is Nashville.
Funding for This is Nashville comes from you, our listeners, and Music City Prep Clinic, Nashville-based provider for PrEP and offering comprehensive sexual health services in an environment designed to be safe, professional, and shame-free. Learn more at musiccityprep.org.
I'm Blake Farmer, and this is Nashville. Every week since the assassination of Charlie Kirk, we've had news of people losing jobs or otherwise being reprimanded for how they responded in a public way. This week, a teacher in Rutherford County has filed a lawsuit for wrongful termination over a Facebook post related to Kirk's death. She'd taught in public schools in Nashville and Murfreesboro for 25 years, says she was exercising her free speech rights and that it was a post made as a private citizen. You're here with the Roundabout episode where we talk about the headlines of the week, and you can join us on air with a phone call, 615-760-2000. Bruce, you've written a lot about this. Does the First Amendment protect one from being fired for something they say online?
Well, you're going to hate this answer, but sometimes, often. But it depends on a lot of things. Yeah. One of the important things it depends on is whether you work in the public or private sector. You don't really have a right to expect First Amendment protections when you're employed in a private sector job. Then it becomes a question of what the employer will tolerate. But the First Amendment really applies in a much more forceful way, but not a total, complete way in the public sector workplace. And a lot of the cases, like the teacher you mentioned,
so public sector, I mean, public school system. Public
school system, okay. Public university. And a lot of the cases that have gotten publicity since the Kirk assassination have been around public employees and hasty actions by their employers, a university, a school system, an agency, to dismiss them because they said something untoward. I remember hearing that and thinking to myself, well, the lawsuits are going to follow, the wrongful discharge lawsuits, because in many cases, you are protected as a public sector employee. You can say things, you can speak as a private citizen on matters of public concern and public affairs without fear for losing your job. Now, employers, even public sector employers, do have the right to part ways with employees whose off-work extracurricular speech would actually compromise the ability of that entity, school system, agency, university to conduct its business appropriately. But you have to prove that. It can't just be conjectural. And if a case like the one you've described ends up actually going to a jury, the jury will be weighing a claim that this speech was so horrible and disruptive that it made it impossible for that person to function in their job or for this agency or school system to do its business. But you have to prove that. And so some of these lawsuits that are being filed along these lines, the plaintiffs are going to win.
Well, we're kind of lighting up the phones with this issue. Josh in Clarksville, you're on This is Nashville. What do you have to say?
Well, I just think that, as I'm a long-time First Amendment defender, and, I tend to lean a little bit more towards the left, but I think this is an issue that we've seen for years and years and years, and I think that it's important to remind, even my colleagues on the left, that we reiterated the exact same thing to people who said things that were, racially insensitive, all of that. And you have to remember that, like, particularly when it comes to private sector employees, as a private entity, most corporations aren't concerned with political beliefs. They're trying to avoid as much as they can being divisive or being controversial. And as, despite my disagreements with it, Citizens United established that, they are entities that have their own, rights to be able to determine who they want to associate with and who they want to employ. So when it comes, people need to remember that the First Amendment is a legal protection, not a protection from consequences of your actions. So when it comes down to saying things that might be controversial, and you saw a lot of that with the aftermath of Charlie Kirk, that people said things that, most people would consider hateful or inflammatory, and any private entity is not going to be associated with that. So I think it's important to remember that when we're trying to keep the level of discourse fair to both sides and allowing people to have their space, that those consequences also cut both ways.
Hey,
and I think it's
Josh, I just wanted to say, we've got your point there, and appreciate the consequences cutting both ways. That's a helpful point there. Marianna, have we had? I know in some places it's been, some elected officials even kind of pointing out instances and asking, employers to take a look at this. Have we seen some of that in Tennessee?
I think Marsha Blackburn in particular has spearheaded a lot of those efforts. I've gotten her press releases even from, I think there was a Secret Service member that was fired over comments related to Charlie Kirk's death, a lot of universities here in town.
Yeah. Representative Barrett, have you been surprised at any of that elected officials have been trying to shine a spotlight on folks who are making comments that could be deemed pretty insensitive?
No, I'm not surprised. In fact, I think it goes back to what Bruce was talking about in the beginning, in that I think the commentary and the knee-jerk reaction or guttural reaction to seeing those comments is indicative of how offensive those comments were at the time and in the moment. And I think that will go against the folks that are trying to file suit. And I think it's important. The caller had it just right. The First Amendment is there to protect you from the government limiting your right to free speech, not from private entities or private corporations. You have the right to say whatever you want to say, but you are not free from consequences. We are a right-to-work state. And even in the case of university professors or employees, absent some employment contract or relationship that limits them from being removed or excused from their employment as a result of their off work or off-campus activities or comments, there's not going to be much of a legal defense for that.
Let's take another caller. Carol in Nashville. Carol, I'm having trouble hitting this button here, but I think that you're going to be on if you just talk to us. Carol in Nashville, you there?
Yes, hello. Thank you for taking my call. And I would like to point out that in the 1960s and 70s, I was a college student, and there was a lot of campus unrest. A lot of students were protesting the Vietnam conflict. A lot of the older generation and established generation just thought, oh, those are a bunch of hippies and their long, straggly hair, and they didn't like them. But the student protests actually ended up showing the American populace the truth about the Vietnam conflict. And I can foresee a situation where the Trump and the Trump-like administration is so vindictive that if there's a student protest at any of these universities who accept this agreement, that they will be punished and their students will be punished for speaking up. And I think it's a terrible, it would be a Faustian bargain if Vanderbilt accepts this.
So, Carol, taking us back to the issue of this compact that the Trump administration has proposed with a handful of universities around the country. Bruce, do you see any connections, things we could learn from the Vietnam era?
Well, I mean, Carol's point is a really good one about student protest, although it's not completely divorced from the topic of people being punished for their speech as employees, since, some of us faculty and staff might be out there with those students at these protests. But I think Carol makes a pretty good point about the compact that hidden in there, or, part of the subtext of it, is this implication that the federal government wants to, in some sense, police, maybe overly strong word, but police how campuses manage speech and activism and protest. I mean, that's a concern, and it's not a concern that's just dreamt up out of nothing, because we certainly saw how that operated with some situations at, for example, Columbia University last year.
Well, we're going to move on to a couple of new topics, and was someone inhaling to make a point? Okay, thought I heard that. So let me go to this book banning point. PEN America released its list of most banned books for the last school year. One takeaway, though, was that the number of books banned by school districts has spiked exponentially in the last couple of years, although this year was actually lower than last year. But the last few years, it's been on a big upward trend. Leading states are Florida, Texas, and Tennessee. We had 1,600 instances of book banning in the last school year, which PEN America calls a disturbing normalization of censorship. It was interesting, the number one book being censored is A Clockwork Orange, dystopian novel from 1962. So this is not new, but some of it's related to LGBTQ identity stuff. Marianna, how much are we seeing of that in Tennessee, that it's about some of these gender issues rather than just old books that people read anew and thought, man, my kid shouldn't be reading this?
I would say a majority of the legal challenges that the ACLU has brought against these sort of book bans have been in cases where these are LGBTQ books. And I guess it doesn't surprise me that Tennessee is, up there with Texas and Florida. We've been sort of, even at the legislature, a leader in Republican policies that are adopted elsewhere. So that doesn't really surprise me.
Representative Barrett, is this, obviously this is often at the school board level and responding to parents, but certainly the legislature has weighed in on this issue with laws in the past few years. Are you seeing any unintended consequences from, lawmakers being focused on content of books?
No, I don't necessarily see any unintended consequences. And I think what is important to note here, and again, I know I'm probably a little bit in hostile territory here.
This is a safe place.
But nobody's banning books.
The term is
that term is just wrong. Nobody's saying that you can't publish these books, sell them, make them available to the public through other avenues. They're simply saying here in Tennessee that there's a process now for parents and administrators at the local level to determine whether or not a book is appropriate to be in a school library. There should be no objection to that for local control at the local level.
Bruce, quick point.
The group PEN America that watchdogs this stuff they use the word banning, and they define it as making unavailable books that used to be available. So they choose to use that term. But the important thing here is I want to say is I think that parents who want to shield their children from the real world of ideas and controversies should send their children to private schools and pay for that, rather than trying to police this material in public schools for everybody else.
Well, you're getting a head shake from Representative Barrett. Quickly.
Well, now you're going to make me argue in favor of the school vouchers.
Oh, boy.
I knew you would.
Well, let's leave it with a laugh. We're going to leave you with a few smile stories. I'm going to start, and this one is dozens of Bob Ross paintings, many of them painted live on air on PBS stations, are being auctioned off to support public television. This was my favorite smile story of the week. Apparently, it is the largest single offering of Bob Ross original works ever brought to market. So how about that? I'd forgotten that Bob Ross died just at 52 of cancer in 1995. Marianna, you got anything?
Rent is down in Nashville year over year, and across Tennessee, it's by 1.5%. But hey, that's still...
Rent is down. Nashville and statewide. All right, we'll take it. We'll ask no more questions. Just thank the Lord. Bruce?
You told me Schadenfreude was allowed when we talked before the show. I'm a baseball fan, and I very much enjoyed reading a lot of detail this morning about how and why the New York Yankees, as a Met fan myself, were eliminated from the baseball playoffs and will play no more baseball this year. That's a good news story.
Well, Bruce is smiling about that one. If you're a Yankees fan, maybe not. And Representative Barrett has made us smile all day. So thank you to Representative Barrett, to Marianna Bacallao, WPLN's Power and Equity reporter, and Bruce Berry of the Tennessee Lookout for making time for us in a very busy week. Thank you. Thanks for tuning in this hour. This is Nashville is a production of Nashville Public Radio. If you missed yesterday, we talked about the state of pride in Nashville with corporate sponsors backing away and individual fundraising trying to fill the gap. You can catch up in the podcast feed or ask a smart speaker to play the latest episode. Today's episode is produced by Mary Mancini, directed by Tasha A.F. Limley. Josh Deepan was on the phones, and our board operator is Liv Lombardi. The masterminds behind that theme music are Larange and Namir Blade. The conversation doesn't have to end here. Email us at thisisnashville@wpln.org to tell us what you want to hear more of. You can also find us on the socials. This is Nashville. I'm Blake Farmer. Go in peace.